Clark Lee's no-fear approach to the spring game will make the Vanderbilt Commodores successful. What does it mean? Here we go.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. On this episode, we're going to discuss what no fear of evaluation actually means. With the rest of the college football world canceling spring games, Clark Lee is unafraid because he has evaluations to make of his own. Those reps are important for a lot of key positions, and there's more to it than that, but that's kind of the gist of it. Next, we're going to dive into the theory of incorporating more man coverage will inevitably improve the pass defense. That's supposed to go hand in hand. And then, of course, is that able to put more pressure on opposing offenses and create more stress? Well, we're going to look at it. In hoops, Vandy's second domino hits the portal. JQ Roberts, what does that do for the Dores and their quest to repeat and get back into the NCAA tournament for another shot? Well, we'll discuss all of that. But thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later in this episode. So here's the thing when it comes to canceling spring games. A lot of people are doing it. That's the trend now. People are so scared of the transfer portal. They're so scared of all of that. And what they end up doing is, I think, honestly, they end up taking those reps away, and they end up, I'm sure they try to figure out something else. I'm not sure they're just taking it off of the books completely, but I think you're missing out on another recruiting opportunity. And in a world that's just paralyzed with transfer portal stuff, if people are going to hit the portal, they're going to hit the portal. I don't think that really matters. And for teams that have important decisions to make, you, as best as you can, need to simulate that game situation. And with spring games, when you have fans in the seats and you've created a game atmosphere, or as much of one as you possibly can with these spring games, I think it's a little bit, I don't want to say totally foolish, but I think you're bordering on the edge of extreme paranoia when hey, guys are going to poach. Well, they have ways of doing it. They're going to poach. If you're good, you're going to get tampered with. It's just going to happen. It's inevitable. So I don't know what you do in that regard. There's some ideas floating out there. I know Deion Sanders has been, Coach Prime has been really pounding the table with getting together with other programs, and Fran Brown at Syracuse is down for that, and I think some other people have kind of jumped in and say they would be okay with that. So getting together with these other programs and having sort of OTAs, you have some OTA sessions, and then you have a 3-day work week followed by a game with you partner with somebody, maybe the idea of partnering with an in-state FCS program to do that, kind of like what the NFL does with their preseason games. I think what the NFL does with those preseason games is great. All the great reps are in those work days, right? So the preseason games can be meant to evaluate down the line guys, which you could probably start treating spring practices like that. So if they want to go with the NFL model, maybe you do that for OTA periods. Maybe you do that in training camp, right? Maybe you do have a mid-August scrimmage against somebody where you go and work for a couple of days, and you have an 11-on-11 period where it's as much game-like as you can. Obviously, you probably don't want to go live on the quarterbacks in those scenarios, but you just try to create these, that's how you get effective reps. So this is an interesting topic, and this is something that's probably not going to stop here and just okay, well, we talked about it, here we go. It's something that's going to keep going and going and going while the transfer portal rages on. The other option, I guess, would be to eliminate the spring portal, and people would probably be okay, well, there's got to be something that happens. So here's the quote. Here's the quote that Clark Lee said. He said, "I know there's a fear of evaluations." He said, "I'm not going to operate out of fear. We're going to do what we think is best for the program. We're going to put our guys in the best position for them to be successful. And spring games are a great way to wrap up what is really tough sequence of 15 practices." So what that quote means is, I ain't scared. We're going to evaluate our guys. We're going to do what's best for our program. If we recruited the right guys, whether it be portal guys or high school guys, if we recruited the right guys, they're going to stick with us. And, the portal's open for us too. So like if we lose somebody, we just, we backfill and we make do. Like that's the way of college football. That's how things are going. Right. So top goals for spring is this. Now the things they have to kind of figure out. What's the quarterback situation? Who's quarterback two? Who's hitting the portal out of the quarterback group? They're going to have to, get to 105. So one or two of these quarterbacks are going to have to get cut. That's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? Offensive line, you need to find out who your offensive line, the rest of your starters. You got portal guys. You need to get those guys reps and get those guys used to things. But like, who's going to be your strong tackle? Who's going to be your quick guard? What are your options there? Do you need to go into the portal for that? What do you have to do? What's left to fill on defense? What's the plan at safety? Like what are you going to do? You need more bodies at the safety position. Like, what are you going to do? It's probably inevitable that they're going to go to the portal to get a safety, but like, what do you do? How do you evaluate? What's the deal there? So, there's a lot of questions to be answered in this spring portal or in this spring practice session that, it almost seems stupid to cancel it, right? And yeah, they're risky. The spring portal's right around the corner. But again, it just comes down to the decisions that Clark Lee has to make, creating game-like atmospheres. So you see how people in front of a packed house, how do these players react? How do these wide receivers react when it's a game-like situation? Now, I know you can't replicate Vandy versus Texas and that atmosphere, but you can get as many people in the stands and you can replicate that. Make a couple of open scrimmages to where you create those game-like atmospheres. Like who's going to step up at wide receiver? That you need to see them in a game situation to where you put something on the line and there's a win and there's a loss and there's some other things to do to be able to evaluate. With the spring game, you're able to do that to a certain degree. All right. You need to thin out the quarterback room. Like you got to put these guys to the test. And obviously you're not going to go live, but you need to get as close to that line as you possibly can with guys like Blaise Berlowitz, who has been kind of hit or miss this spring. You need to do that with, Jeremy St. Hilaire, who's shown flashes, but he hasn't really popped off as being a consistent option as a backup quarterback. Drew Dickey, who at once was thought, I probably had him as the number one guy out. He might be the quarterback. He might be the second quarterback. And, he's doing pretty, he's getting rave reviews. He's probably the most consistent out of the backup guys. So Whit Muschamp, nothing much to, he's honestly probably going to be the odd man out, unfortunately. But you got some decisions to make there. So what happens to that? Dickey, I don't know where you stand and what decisions you're going to make, but you have to see if Drew Dickey, who has a low floor, but also theoretically a low ceiling, he's a guy, but is he really going to be able to come in and win games for you if Diego Pavia were to go down? Right. Blaise Berlowitz, what can he do? Do they say goodbye to both of those guys and go with the long-term upside of Jeremy St. Hilaire? Or do they go get some proven guy to come in and add depth or, and be ready to go if needed? What do they do there? So those are things you can't decide on if you're canceling the spring game and doing some crazy little hoopla games that, Ole Miss did last year. Safety, Dante Carter, is he losing grip on his position? He's made his share of plays, but, honestly, he needs to add mass. And, and Dante Carter is going to factor into my next discussion, so I won't get too far into what he brings to the table. But he'll go into the next discussion here, and his value, I think, increases based on what, this defensive staff is really kind of wanting to do scheme wise. Tackle, they took Bryce Henderson in the portal. He's got to be the favorite at the strong tackle position at this point. Big 6'8" dude, 320. He fits in at that strong tackle position. Now what happens at the other guard position? Is Kevo Wesley really the guy? They need to test that out. The running back room, is it deep enough, or do they need to get in the portal there? Obviously, you know what you have in Cedric Alexander, so him playing in the spring game probably really isn't all that important, right? But MK Young, Johan Cardenas, is there enough guys there? Is Chase Gillespie somebody that gets left out on the 105? And then wide receiver, who's going to step up? Joseph McVay hasn't been practicing. He's been injured. He's been nicked up, banged up, whatever you want to say. So he hasn't been able to get those valuable reps, but Chance Fitzgerald is benefiting. Bosky Barrett is improving. Tristan Brown is flashing a little bit. These guys you're starting to see some reports of these guys getting open now, which I was kind of worried if they weren't going to be able to. And they're starting to get open. I just got to figure out a way to get them the ball, right? It's one step at a time. You can't do that if you're not culminating there. So, I'll leave this topic at this. I think you rob your community of also connecting with the team, and this is a community, and this is a team that really needs that connection point, because Nashville will get behind you if they feel connected. But if you don't connect, you got to have something there. Which on April 12th, you had that chance. And those things are important. If you have community support, NIL, people will chip in. The players will see that. They'll see the community. They'll see things happening. And, I think it's like a, snowball effect. I think you can only have good things. And I know Ohio State, Texas, USC, Nebraska, Michigan State, they're all afraid. They're all afraid that their competitors are going to turn on ESPN and they're going to recruit their players. And that's going to happen at some point until you put some guardrails on this transfer portal stuff. It will happen, so why not just, I don't know, you got to figure it out, right? It's just some new challenges. So, but anyway, I think spring games are, great for evaluating your roster. Spring practice, same way. Is there some new things you can do? Yeah, there's probably some great ideas out there. Whether they'll execute them or not, who knows? All right. And it's also a great way for you to incorporate new schemes. And those new schemes, we're going to talk about those, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We'll talk about those next. Hey, but first, we have to salute our Armada Team of the Week. That's brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada, which is like a tank, by the way. Each week, our Locked On College basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart. From top-seeded stars to unexpected upsets, these guys showcase their strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada's clear-cut Team of the Week is the Arkansas Razorbacks. Despite losing their first 5 SEC game, Coach Cal's Hogs fought their way through the most rugged conference in college basketball to not only make the NCAA tournament, but to knock off back-to-back national champion and Hall of Fame coaches en route to the Sweet 16. They accomplished all of this without the second leading scorer, Boogie Fland, for most of the SEC play, and without leading scorer and rebounder, Adu Thero, so far in the NCAA tournament. So when it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. And that's exactly what the Arkansas Razorbacks have done here. So it's clear that our Team of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. So take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. All right, welcome back. Locked On Vandy. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. If you need a second listen, perhaps you should choose Locked On SEC with Chris Gordy, or perhaps Locked On Ole Miss with Stephen Willis. He's riding high right now with Ole Miss in the Sweet 16. So if you want some of that expanded NCAA tournament coverage, make sure you keep it locked to there's 7 shows out there right now that are still talking college basketball and actual games. So make sure you check those out. But anyway, we're talking football here because guess what? Vandy's no longer in the tournament. That's okay though. Magical season for Mark Byington. I have to give him credit. All right. Unfortunately, they're just not in it right now. All right. So scheme changes, right? Something that I think honestly we've been looking at and wanting for most of last year. Okay. Man coverage. I'm a big fan of man coverage, by the way. I'm a big fan of it. I wish Vandy would have done it more. I think when they did it, they were able to get pressure on the quarterback. And, I think man coverage and 6-man pressures aren't sustainable if you do them every passing situation. But I do think playing 89% zone is, I think, a little, I don't want to say soft, that's not the right word, but it's a little bit cautious. And being cautious allows you to rank second to last among SEC teams with 7.9 yards allowed per pass. All right. Those curl routes, there's, 10-yard stops. There's like first down routes that quarterbacks were able to get into rhythm and complete because there were soft spots in the zone. And yes, there weren't as many big plays over the top. But, I think in year one, Clark Lee wanted to play a little more cautiously defensively because he wasn't sure. And when he did feel like he could get aggressive, he did. And they often got home on pressures. Nick Rinaldi, Miles Capers, those guys were able to get home and many more. Corday Sidnor when he was healthy, and Linus Zunk, and I could name a bunch, but I think the key here though for Vanderbilt is being able to get home on third down without having to bring the house, right? I think you'd love to bring the house in some situations, in some pressure situations, but ultimately I think you have to, get to be able to get home with 4 occasionally, right? So increasing man coverage. Why do I love it? Okay. Why do I love it? It puts more stress on opposing offenses, especially in the red zone. Okay. So get this. Imagine you're a quarterback. You got the ball. It's 2nd and 7. Pretty stressful play call. It doesn't seem that way, but it's a pretty stressful play call because if you don't get anything, 3rd and 7 is awful. All right. But imagine being 2nd and 7. You're at about the 18-yard line, and you look over. You have 3 receivers out. You're in kind of a run pass type of formation to where it's not like, okay, it's more difficult to run out of this formation, or hey, it's more difficult to pass out of the situation, which is some things you get in the red zone. It's kind of more of a balanced set that allows you to kind of do whatever. So imagine looking across. You see your slot. You got Dante Carter right there on. Right there right there in his face. Then you look out, Martell Height. You look out to the boundary. You have Colby Taylor. They're all sitting right there in the face, right? Or Marlon Jones, or just whatever names you want to insert, just insert them, right? And so just imagine the stress of a quarterback, especially one that hasn't gotten a ton of reps. Imagine Lenore Sellers looking out there and seeing that and the stress that it's going to put on him in week 3. When, there's still going to be a large amount of questions around his development as a passer. There just will be. So imagine being able to put that kind of stress on him. Now, when you do that, you have to be able to tackle well against a guy like Lenore Sellers because he will run for a mile if you let him. So, that's kind of your give and take. But like, imagine the stress that puts on. The windows become tighter. The lanes shrink. The pressure of throwing a perfect ball increases. So you put all of that on a quarterback, which, even Arch Manning, you put that on Arch Manning, and even though he'll be probably 6 or 7 starts into his career, and Sark is a really good developer of quarterbacks and has a really quarterback-friendly scheme, and Texas has a ton of talent around there, but psychologically, it's just not comfortable. And there's going to be some errors made. And whether or not Vanderbilt can capitalize on those errors, that remains to be seen. But those errors will present themselves. And those opportunities for error will present themselves. And it just, the stress alone of having to throw a perfect pass so that it doesn't get, deflected or intercepted, it does something to a quarterback psyche. It just does. It does something to a play caller. Play callers get a little bit tighter against teams that play heavy man coverage. And ultimately you can get the defense off the field on third down. So when you do that, it allows your pass defense to get better because your numbers are going to improve. There's going to be more incompletions. There's going to be chances for more turnovers. Your run defense, I think, ultimately also will improve because teams will try to loosen you up a little bit. And if you can get ahead of the chains, you can get into some more pressure situations to where if your man coverage is on point, you have a lot of options, let's just say. And teams are able, and I think playing zone coverage is great in a lot of scenarios, but I think it just allows teams to play you a certain way. And when you can't, it's very stressful. So that's neither here nor there. But when you look at it, it's going to be really, really good. And we'll have some more tidbits as we go with spring practice, but we're switching gears now. We know Mark Byington, what he needs in the portal, but replacing J.Q. Roberts is now one of those things. We're going to talk about it next. All right. But first, we're going to talk about Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help get the job done right. Plus, with the complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service so that you always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. So join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, wrapping up the show here, Locked On Vandy. Thank you for making us part of your day. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day at Locked On Vandy on all social media platforms. Make sure you follow. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe and follow anywhere you get your podcast. So we're wrapping up the show here, talking hoops, because it is now portal season. And what does that mean for Vanderbilt? Now, means guys are going to leave, guys are going to come in. But, I think there's a little bit less panic, if I'm being honest, as far as guys hitting the portal. So the latest portal addition is J.Q. Roberts. Okay. And I know he had some really good moments for Vanderbilt basketball coming in as a reserve. Didn't play as much as he probably would have liked to. But he's gonna look elsewhere. He's going to enter the portal. He's a sophomore. He played sparingly. He averaged a point per game, less than a rebound per game, in 4.6 minutes over 21 appearances. He was a 3-star recruit. He was a Jerry Stackhouse guy. He's 6'8", 230 pounds. He's a natural power forward, but played center as a sophomore. And so, he did the whole message there, but. what does that do to this team? Okay. Now, he was playing a little bit out of position. And with this offense, honestly, I'm not sure he was a great fit. I mean, he came in and played above his head and did well. But I think the fact that he didn't get a ton of minutes or hardly any at all was probably more to the fact of it just maybe not a really good scheme fit, right? He's a good player. I think he fits somewhere. I don't know where that is, but he fits somewhere. And I think he'll find his landing spot, and I think he'll be okay. So, when you replace him, I think you got to find another Devin McLaughlin or another Jalen Carey type player who can serve in that power forward, low post guy that is more athletic and can kind of play on all fronts, can shoot a little bit, rebound, defend in the paint, things like that. But I think some people might see that and go, "Oh no, here we go. We're losing guys." But to be honest with you, I think we're not in as bad of a position as we probably once thought. I mean, when you really look in the grand scheme of things, I think Vandy has a lot to offer in basketball. I think the world saw that. I think if you're a 6'11" center that can play powerful and is somewhat athletic, I think you saw that that team plays in the best conference in America. That team plays in a conference that got 14 NCAA tournament bids. That team plays in a conference that has 7 teams in the Sweet 16. Maybe I go there and NBA scouts will find me. That's a novel concept, right? There is such thing as going to a situation to where you're going to get the best evaluation possible. So like a school like Vanderbilt for a big man is going to be a really good opportunity because guess what? There's a need. You're going to step right in. There's going to be no doubt. You're not coming in to potentially compete for a starting spot. Theoretically, that's what they're going to tell you. But you are coming in to a situation you're going to start right away. The expectations are going to be that you dominate the paint, you get all the boards, you play all the defense, you score some of these low post baskets, and when we need you to take over a game against a guard dominated team, we need you to take over a game against a guard dominated team, right? When Kentucky had all those injuries, they just went down low and pushed Vandy around, right? St. Mary's, they were down 12. They weren't freaking out. Why? Because they knew all they had to do was just lean on Vanderbilt down low, and there was nothing they could do about it. There was nothing, they put their Twin Towers in, and there was nothing really Vandy could do about it because they just didn't have the bodies. You saw Vandy trying to crash the boards. They just couldn't get rebounds. And then St. Mary's got hot shooting, and it's not a good combination if you're trying to win a basketball game. So, in that regard, it can get kind of tough for a team like Vanderbilt when you have such a size disadvantage. So Vanderbilt has a lot to offer in that regard. So I'm not worried about that necessarily. I think there's going to be plenty of runs made at some of these big guys. I think NIL is going to be directed there, and I think you're going to find a team that's going to be built around a core. It's just college athletics now. There's going to be a lot of portal movement regardless of who you are. You could be Duke. You could be Iona. There's going to be transfer movement. There's going to be guys coming in. There's going to be guys coming out. Right? There's guys in, there's guys out. It's just the way it is. There's going to be a lot of roster turnover. Coach Cal is, he knows how to deal with it at Arkansas now because he dealt with it for years at Kentucky. Not necessarily transfer portal, but guys going to the NBA. So, it's nothing to really freak out about. Now, what does that mean? Well, there's a lot of names out there that I think could be really good in the portal. There's some really good big men in there, and I'm a fan of what they have to offer. There's some guards in there that I think would be good. I think if they had a chance to add somebody who can shoot, that would be good. there's a lot of people leaving Virginia. I don't know who they're going to hire as their head coach. So I'm not real sure there, but it's going to be, there's going to be some guys in the portal, and we'll sort out the names. And right now, I think it's just names piling up. So I don't think there's any real rumors. I don't think there's any real movement. I don't think there can be. But it's going to be crazy, right? And there's some guys out there to be had. We just got to figure out who they're evaluating and what they want to do with that position. So I'm fascinated to see kind of how that works. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But should we be freaked out about J.Q. Roberts? No, not at all. He'll be fine. He'll be fine where he goes. Vanderbilt will be fine, and it'll be good. So, but that's all we got. And with basketball out of the way, I know that sounds terrible, but like with no basketball, we've got plenty of football news. I think the football team is on the up and up. And this is going to be an exciting spring, and it's going to be an exciting spring for baseball as well. I think we're going to get some good transfer portal news in basketball, and it's going to be a really good spring leading up into football season and season number 2 of Locked On Vandy football. It'll be my second season covering Vanderbilt football, so that'll be fun as well. But anyway, we'll see you back here later. Great talking to you. Like, subscribe, follow at Locked On Vandy, and we'll check you back here next time on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Check out Locked On College Hoops next.